This episode will be completely taken out of context. Welcome to the Fact Check This podcast.
All right, Fact Check This podcast, and today is the first part of a four-part series that is going to... I'm not going to have a whole lot of personal commentary on this. Mostly I'm just going to read it because it's very well done, very well looked into. This is from Townhall. It's a four-part series that looks at the child pedophile ring and the gay couple in, I believe it was North Carolina, who had Georgia, who had adopted these brothers and then were recording porn using them and also basically pimping them out. The whole thing is fucking disgusting, but it's gotten very, very little attention or coverage. So I'm gonna go through the whole thing, all four parts. Not today. It's gonna be this episode and the next three after this to go through all four parts of it. And like I said, I'm not gonna have a whole lot of personal commentary because it's well done, and they are, each piece is pretty long and very in depth. More or less, the purpose of this is because it's not getting talked about, and I don't know if, I think like people who run in my circles, and so probably most of y'all who are listening have heard about this stuff, but I don't know that a lot of like normies have. So the purpose of this is to put it in video, digestible form, audio form, that people who don't know about it, you can share this with them and they can listen to it or watch it, because I know reading is not something that people like to do, particularly in our modern society. So that's what you got me for. I read it for you. So let's just jump right into this because, like I said, it is pretty long. Tapes. We investigated a suburban LGBTQ pedophile ring. Here's what we found. This is part one of a four-part investigative series. Content warning: this article contains graphic descriptions of child sexual abuse. Reader discretion is advised. Yeah. A months-long town hall investigation reveals disturbing new details about the affluent LGBTQ activist couple accused of sodomizing their young adopted sons, now ages 9 and 11, and distributing homemade child pornography of the sexual abuse. Half a year after a shocking story made national news, Townhall is the only outlet following up on the criminal case in Georgia that has since seen zero headlines written about it. We found it's far, far worse than what was first reported. Not only did the married men allegedly rape the two boys who were adopted through a Christian special needs adoption agency, they were pimping out their children to nearby pedophiles in Atlanta area suburbs, Townhall's follow-up investigation discovered. Recorded jailhouse calls, a trove of never-before-seen court documents, and testimony from a family member who spoke exclusively with Townhall uncover the extent of the physical and emotional trauma the two elementary school-aged brothers endured, as well as the red flags that the state overlooked during the same-sex couple's faster-than-expected adoption process. And here's some lovely family photos. As Townhall reported in August, the suspects were darlings of the LGBTQ media. They were part of an anti-gay hate campaign promoting hashtag #NoH8, no hate, and Out magazine, which holds the nation's highest circulation amongst LGBTQ monthly publications, has repeatedly asked them if its website's Pride page can feature their photos taken at the Atlanta Pride Parade. The charges: the adoptive father's 33-year-old government worker William Dale Zulock Jr. and 35-year-old banker Zach Jacoby Zulock, who was previously accused of raping a child, from Oxford, Georgia, have been indicted by a grand jury on charges of incest, aggravated sodomy, aggravated child molestation, felony sexual exploitation of children, and felony prostitution of a minor. William and Zachary are each facing over 9 life sentences. They've pleaded not guilty. According to a copy of the 17-count indictment Townhall has obtained, The adoptive dads allegedly performed oral sex on both boys, forced the children to perform oral sex on them, and anally raped their sons. In at least one instance, the anal rape injured the older Zulock child, who just turned 11 years old in mid-December. Court records indicate that the child's sexual abuse stretches back to as early as late 2019 and intensified in January 2021, March 2021, and December of 2021, as the offense dates are listed. The brothers were enrolled in 3rd and 4th grade, respectively, before the men were caught in a midnight July bust at a Zulock mansion, which ended with Zachary tackled to the ground and William hauled out of the house naked by armed officers. The two Zulock boys, whose faces were censored by Zachary Zulock in 1st and 2nd grade, holding academic certificates from the 2019-2020 school year when the child sexual abuse is alleged to have started. So, I mean, these were kids, man. These were little kids. Golly. William admitted to forcing his 11-year-old adoptive son to perform an act of sodomy, aka oral copulation, on him with the intent to satisfy his own sexual desire, reads a sworn affidavit filed in support of William's overnight arrest back in July 27th. Townhall has redacted the children's names to protect the identities of the underage victims. Here's the affidavit for the criminal arrest. An updated criminal affidavit says the child's sexual abuse was filmed by William's husband, Zachary, with whom he routinely engaged in sexually abusive acts on the boy. Zachary, the household's breadwinner, confessed to being the cameraman, and authorities allegedly found a folder on his cell phone labeled Us that contains videos of William sexually abusing the child. The indictment also charges the Zulock co-defendants with soliciting 2 other men through the use of popular social media platforms in the greater Atlanta metropolitan region to perform an act of prostitution with their child that suffered physical injuries from being brutally raped. Townhall is the first to publicly identify these 2 alleged members of a pedophile ring in the heart of the Peach State: 27-year-old Hunter Clay Lawless and 25-year-old Luis Armando Vizcarra Sanchez, both of Loganville. And there those sick fuckers are. Lawless, who snitched on the Zulocks, told local law enforcement he received numerous messages via Snapchat from Zachary about fucking his son tonight and to be prepared to receive images as well as videos of the father raping his adopted child. Zachary met Lawless through a mutual contact, an unidentified man going only by the first name Blake, on the day dating app Grindr. Following the virtual introduction, Zachary sent photographs and videos of Lawless of a little boy he referred to as his son. "Gonna fuck my son tonight, stand by," Zachary allegedly messaged Lawless on Snapchat, and then sent pictures of himself sexually abusing his 11-year-old child. After he was busted, Lawless denied having had any physical contact with the Zulock boys, but told law enforcement officers that Zachary invited him multiple times to engage in sexual acts with him and his 2 children. A list of the state's evidence includes 149 images collected at the Zulock home, 2 flash drives containing Zachary and Lawless's phone data, sexual assault nurse examination results from the children's medical forensic exams, which gathered DNA evidence such as bodily fluids and documented injuries, a text message from Lawless, a Snapchat letter, 2 written letters from the older Zulock child, and a disk containing a data dump from Vizcarra Sanchez's iPad and iPhone. A photo of a daddy shirt is also an evidentiary item listed by the district attorney's office. Police had found clothes in the older Zulock child's bedroom that matched the clothing the boy was wearing in the photos and videos Zachary allegedly sent Lawless. Years ago, Zachary had proudly displayed a child-sized "So Cool Like Dad" t-shirt he received as a gift at his adoption shower. The relative on Zachary's side of the family, who agreed to speak with Townhall on the condition of anonymity, grilled Zachary during a series of recorded phone conversations in the fall of 2022 on who exactly Lawless is and how he knows the suspect. I mean, like I said, not everything that's being said is accurate or true. So, and I'm not trying to lose everything. Zachary, who's being held separately from William while in pretrial detainment, replied. Zachary was transferred to Barrow County Detention Center and placed under maximum security due to the nature of the charges, a jail staffer told Townhall. Yeah, due to the nature of the charges, because as it turns out, convicted felons, murderers, like legitimately heinous fuckers. They really, really hate pedophiles. And guys who rape kids, oh, they get all kinds of bad things done to them. As well they should. Does this guy, Lawless, know you at all? Or is it some random thing? He's just trying to rat somebody, the relative asked. So last time he was here, I told him something, and I told you, last time he was here, I wrote him down something and gave it to him. It's something around those lines, but more. Zachary responded vaguely without explaining further. Zachary insisted in a separate phone call, all I can say is, it's not all true. That's all I can say. I need someone in the family who doesn't hate me. So, I can't tell you what to feel, or I can't cry right now around other people, Zachary pleaded in lockup, audibly starting to sob on the phone. I just need somebody who doesn't hate us, he cried. Just don't forget me, Zachary beseeched the relative at the end of their first call in September. Nah, fuck that, dude. Fuck that. Zachary began frantically searching for Lawless's profile on Facebook last January, the relative who has access to his social media accounts observed. Over on Snapchat, Zachary has active, unopened chats with multiple men, according to the source. Zachary, who lists his Snapchat username in his Instagram bio, where the self-described activist brags about being Papa of our two wonderful boys, admitted to sending such material to less than a dozen people. There are other potential co-defendants under investigation that are out there circulating videos of Zulock boys. Alcovey Judicial Circuit District Attorney Randy McGinley, who serves Walton County, told the court at a September 7th bond hearing, according to a transcript provided to Townhall. They just view underage boys as sex objects, McGinley said of the Zulock co-defendants as the virtual court appearance. The raid and seizure. Since the Zulocks have been taken into custody, the married men's assets have been seized, their vehicles have been forfeited, and their home is now the property of the state with a lien filed against it. The Zulock couple's criminal defense attorney, Johnny Haldy, said in court, adding that a sign on the Zulock's house says, "Do not enter, property of Walton County Sheriff's Office." It's BS that they took our house, a frustrated Williams stuck in Walton County Jail protested via an hour-long phone call with the Zulock family insider. They seized the house, everything inside of it, all of our cars on the property, Williams said of the seizure. William recounted the night of the raid, the armed raid on the Zulock residence. They came in at 11:30 at night. I was asleep. Zach was asleep. They were going to bust down our door if Zach didn't open the door, the relative asked. The relative asked, so they rammed down the door? They were about to, but Zach heard them knocking, and he actually went and opened the door. They slammed him on the floor, and I hate to say this, but William paused, momentarily chuckling in a lowered voice. I don't sleep in clothes. So they arrested me in my bed naked, William complained, and they walked me across the front yard, put me in a police cruiser with no clothes. They wouldn't even let me get gym shorts on or anything. William added that he sat stark naked in the back seat of a police car until approximately 4 a.m. the following morning, while they searched our house for God knows what. Yeah, you can tell in Zach's mugshot that he has a big bruise on the left side of his face, the family member said. Yeah, because they slammed him against the floor in the foyer. He had bruises on his knees, his face. They come in blazing with AK-47s or whatever, William continued, recalling about 10 to 15 officers. They were doing like a drug bust or something. Yes. They should treat it much, 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 much worse than a drug bust. AK-47s. That's so fucking stupid. Anyway, because they come in screaming and hollering and overkill, William won. I'm pretty sure they ransacked the whole house. I think they took our house because they think there was extra money coming in from somewhere, and we're like in our 30s and have this big giant house, and they didn't think we could afford it, William said, describing the custom-built home he designed. The couple's dream home sits on a 2-acre secluded cul-de-sac in a private, prestigious, upscale neighborhood where pre-existing houses are selling for as much as $900,000. Construction of the mansion from the ground up took only half a year in 2020. The kids love the forest behind us and the playroom for all their toys, William wrote in a post celebrating its completion. Beforehand, the Zulocks lived out of a small house in Snellville, which neighbors Loganville. At the time, the boys were adopted. The couple's lavish lifestyle began to materialize about a year after the Zulock men got the boys, the family insider told Townhall. In addition to the Zulocks considering purchasing the adjacent property, Zachary told friends they were looking to buy a condo over the next few years somewhere in Gulf Shores and Orange Beach, along the southern tip of Alabama's white sand coastline. Getting ideas for our next house, William had cheekily captioned a picture taken in North Carolina outside the Biltmore estate, a 250-room, 8,000-acre castle that is considered America's largest home and belongs to the industrialist Vanderbilt family. William went on to accuse Walton County law enforcement officials of spinning some lies to seize our house, asserting, "I've come to find out that most of these police officers in this county smudge and lie just so they can get a higher conviction rate." Well, while I may not disagree with him, seems like a pretty flimsy case there. "Me and Zach work our butts off for everything we've had," William later declared. D.A. McGinley explained in an email to Townhall that his office had filed a civil complaint seeking to forfeit the Zulock property. "Forfeitures are a civil proceeding, but handled by my office," McGinley wrote. In response to the Zulocks filed an answer, and then McGinley's office filed a motion for a more definitive statement, which states that the answers was insufficient under the law. The two Zulock men were both denied bond when Judge Foster determined that the co-defendants are threats to children in the community, flight risks, at risk to commit new felony offenses, and could intimidate and influence witnesses or victims. "That was a sack of bricks that was dropped on everybody at the bond hearing," William commented to the relative. Inside the gayest place on earth, gayest place in town. Nestled within a suburban paradise, the Zulock mansion turned house of horrors had surveillance cameras installed in every square foot of the property, the family member told the town hall. There was also a secret windowless room the size of a closet without any doors, hidden behind a movable bookcase in the home office that the cops left open, which felt like something out of a horror movie, the relative said. Another creepy interior room, devoid of windows, was purportedly used as a home theater. LGBTQ pride paraphernalia littered the family's extravagantly furnished 4-bedroom, 5-bathroom house, plus a packed three-car garage, including a rainbow Mickey Mouse stuffed animal placed atop a love above all pillow in the foyer's love seat, where Zachary was swarmed by the SWAT team, and a neon "Love is Love" sign that adorned the kitchen's granite countertop. The lamp's pro-inclusivity phrase, a mainstream LGBTQ mantra that self-styled minor attracted persons have co-opted in a rebranding campaign that attempts to normalize sexual attraction to children, is one Zachary frequently promoted online. The Zulocks own a collection of exotic pets, including a gopher tortoise, which Georgia recognizes as a protected species, in violation of state law, according to a ticket issued by the Georgia Department of Natural Resources. In the interest of judicial economy, the state moved to dismiss the citation, giving the alarming lot of life sentences the Zulock co-defendants are facing. I'm gonna let them slide on the having a protected gopher tortoise. Zachary, a Biden voter and ardent Black Lives Matter advocate who championed left-wing causes on Facebook, also often posted images of the house's exterior, where a welcome mat emblazoned with "gayest place in town" sat at the front door. "Our business is our business. What happens in our home stays in our home," the gay couple allegedly told their abused sons. Beyond the child's sexual abuse, as punishment during after-school hours, the Zulock boys were forced to stand in a corner for 8 hours straight over back-to-back days, only being allowed to move to either eat or use the bathroom. William was also witnessed slapping their younger son hard in the face. "They were just abused every possible way," the relative told Townhall. The relative asked Zachary if he's worried about the two boys and wondering where his sons are. "I mean, yeah, but I definitely can't talk about that. But, yeah. And then I'm concerned about the house and everything because, nothing's being paid, obviously, because I'm here. The longer things that go on, the worse all that gets." Real concerned about Your children. The sooner we get out, the sooner I can manage our finances because things are going to start piling up. William is concerned as well about the bills and monthly expenses. We do have like subscription stuff that needs canceled, like, Disney Plus, Amazon Prime. All that needs to be canceled because it's auto hitting our credit card, William stressed. The boys were just another commodity to them, the family member voiced to Townhall. Kind of seems that way. I'm not going to postulate just yet. Zachary seemed like an animated people pleaser with a penchant for self-promotion. Now, the case has destroyed the illusion of who I thought he was, the family member said. What a narcissistic sociopath. Another relative conveyed to Townhall's insiders that Zachary's overachieving persona was nothing more than a facade to portray a public image of success, while the once blue-haired William, who was the quiet and hard-to-read one, always making my skin fucking crawl. The family is questioning in hindsight how a low-level civil servant and a small-town bank teller could indulge in such niceties. After an application was submitted for representation by a public defender, a letter addressed to William shows that the county's indigent defense program found he is ineligible, citing equity ownership and his spouse's whopping $7,500 a week income. A similar denial memo was also sent to Zachary, who handles their money, pointing to his supposedly well-to-do weekly earnings. According to Zachary's since-deleted LinkedIn page, he was a branch coordinator at the SunTrust Bank in Duluth, a career he touts on Pride-themed t-shirts. But the latest Glassdoor data says the position only carries a modest $62,000 a year in annual salary. Townhall contacted the site's bank supervisor to confirm whether or not if Zachary is still employed and truly raking in a six-figure salary. Unfortunately, I'm not allowed to make any comments, the on-duty manager stated over the phone. We can't verify any information in regards to Zachary's current employment at the SunTrust branch or how much he makes, the manager said. Zachary took vacation time using leftover PTO for the first week or two in jail, and then he tried to place himself on a leave of absence, but management wouldn't hear his plight. I'm pretty sure I don't work there anymore, which is fine because I didn't like it anyway, so it's whatever. But I'm pretty sure I don't have a job anymore, Zachary told his family member. Back when Zachary was a universal bank specialist at PNC Bank, he and William marched yearly in the Atlanta Pride Parade, carrying rainbow Born This Way pride flags and sporting orange PNC shirts made by the Financial Services Corporation, a corporate partner and sponsor of the annual event. The marital partners also participated in AIDS Walk Atlanta year after year. Meanwhile, William worked as a supervisor at the county's Georgia Department of Driver Services Customer Services Center off of Heritage Parkway, where he often assisted teenage student drivers who were seeking to obtain their learner's permit or driver's license. Prior to hiring, all DDS personnel underwent a background check, which included a criminal history report. Townhall called DDS headquarters to inquire about Williams' employment status. We don't give that information out over the phone, the Office of Investigations told Townhall. I won't be able to give you any personal information about the employee. The only money we had coming in is my paycheck and Zach's paycheck, William maintained. And we never told anybody because it wasn't anybody's business. But we get child support from the kids from the state, he revealed to the relative. Oh, you still get child support from the state? The family member asked. Until they're 18, he replied. I didn't know that happened after they were adopted, the relative stated. William, laughing, said, I didn't know that either until we adopted them. When questioned about the legal defense paperwork, William countered, that's something they pulled out of their rear end. Did you mean the information on the finances or what they said in the bond hearing? The family member asked William. Probably about the finances and what Zach makes, William answered, not outright denying what was alleged in the courtroom. And that's the end of part one. I don't want to postulate, but if the Epstein Island stuff didn't show people what goes on with this sort of thing with these sort of people. I hate using that type of wording, but fuck, man. The sick fucks who want to sexually abuse children are willing to pay tons of money. And they also tend to be in fairly high positions. So is it really outside the realm of possibility that all of this influx of money that started after they adopted these boys was directly because they were whoring them out to high bidders? I don't understand, with as much admission as they made, how they can submit a not guilty plea, how that could even be taken seriously. I guess everybody has a right to a fair trial and blah 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 whatever, but holy fucking shit. Like I said at the beginning, they go pretty in depth in all of this stuff. If people don't know what's going on with this, like, people need to be looking at this stuff and talking about this, because this isn't just some isolated incident in somewhere in suburban Georgia. Like, this stuff is going on everywhere. They just hadn't been caught yet. Or the ones who have been caught, it hasn't been talked about. Or they don't want to catch them, and they're not trying to catch them. Like, you build this giant mansion and all this like extravagant over the top shit and really put yourself in the public limelight. That's kind of faux pas for these sorts of groups. They like to stay in the shadows and fly under the radar. So maybe this is taking down one of their own to prove a point that this is not the way you handle your business. These are not the things you do. This stuff is sick. Hopefully you're as disgusted and enraged as I am, just like listening to this and reading through it as well. Be sure to tune in to the next episode on Monday, where I will be covering part 2. Wednesday will be part 3, and the following Monday will be part 4. Leave me a comment. Like, let me know, have you actually heard about this prior to me reading this? I don't think a lot of people do. And that's truly criminal. Thanks for listening. Be sure to tune in to the next one. All right, fact check this, and it is part 2 of the investigation from Townhall into the suburban Georgia gay couple that adopted 2 boys and then proceeded to rape them, record themselves raping them, send the recordings out to people, and also invite other people to come participate in raping them. The guys have pled not guilty. They are currently being held in solitary confinement in maximum security prisons, because if they don't have them in solitary confinement, the prisoners will murder the ever-loving shit out of them, which is probably way too good for either one of these sick fucks. They are facing 9 consecutive life sentences if convicted. I don't see any way that they're not going to be. I mean, the evidence, their own admission of this should be more than damning enough. But here we are. I have no faith in the American judicial system to actually do the right thing. So we'll see how it goes. But we're going to get into part 2 of this, and I'm just going to take off with it because we've already set it up with part 1. Yeah, I want all this stuff to be out there. Like, people don't know about this. It's not gotten any mainstream coverage whatsoever. And that's fucking sickening. So here we go. Part 2. Just how big was the operation led by the LGBTQ couple who abused their adopted sons? This is part 2 of a 4-part investigative series. Content warning: this article contains graphic descriptions of child sexual abuse. Reader discretion is advised. Part 1 was pretty rough. Part 1 of the Zulock saga covered how gay activist William Dale Zulock Jr. and Zachary Zach Jacoby Zulock, the adoptive fathers of 2 boys, have been indicted by a grand jury on a slew of felony child sex charges, including prostitution of a minor. Count 16 and count 17 of the indictment charges the Zulock couple was soliciting 27-year-old Hunter Clay Lawless and 25-year-old Luis Armando Vizcarro Sanchez, both of Loganville, to engage in an act of prostitution with their 11-year-old adopted boy. So these are the co-conspirators. Hours before the Zulocks were arrested on July 27th, Lawless was apprehended earlier in the day by Walton County detectives on a warrant for felony sexual exploitation of children after downloading child pornography of the older Zulock boy, per an affidavit. Authorities were tipped off that Lawless uploaded and stored child sexual abuse material on his Google account through an emergency cyber tip sent to the nationwide Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force Network and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, Child Protective Organization. The affidavit says, noting that numerous other cyber tips were generated with the same Gmail address. One of these photographs, which contained metadata, indicated it was created with an iPhone on December 9th, 2021. It showed a prepubescent child being forced to perform oral sodomy on an adult male, per the affidavit. The victim's age was ascertained based on physical size, stature, and size relative to the male's penis and facial features. During the Mirandized audio-video interview, Lawless admitted that he both knew the sexually abused child was approximately 10 years of age, as well as his legal name. The affidavit concludes, at the time the one child pornographic photo in question was created on the mobile device, the Zulock boy was still 9 years old and would turn the age of 10 a week later on December 15th, 2021. Law enforcement learned from Lawless that there was a secondary suspect producing homemade child sexual abuse material with at least one adopted child who lived in the home with the perpetrator, Walton County Sheriff's Office wrote in a press release. Lawless allegedly met Zachary through a mutual contact named Blake on Grindr, an LGBTQ hookup app, and received numerous Snapchat messages from Zachary saying, "I'm going to fuck my son tonight," and to stand by for graphic visuals of the father raping his child. According to what Lawless told police, Zachary also invited Lawless multiple times to engage in sexual acts with him and his 2 adopted kids, but Lawless denied having any physical contact with the Zulock boys. While investigators first conducted a search warrant at Lawless's house, the suspect ID'd Zachary via his Facebook page. The investigators confirmed through the county school system that the child was enrolled there and obtained a home address. Deputies discovered evidence during the nighttime search and rescue effort at the Zulock mansion that the adoptive fathers of the siblings pair residing in the home were engaging in sexually abusive acts and video documenting this abuse. Police also found clothes in the child's bedroom that matched what the boy was wearing in the CSAM that Zachary allegedly sent Lawless. Lawless, the son of a hairstylist who lives with his mother, was quickly released 2 days after his arrest and has been out on $25,000 bond since July 29th. No one picked up the phone when Townhall called the Lawless household and his mother's hair salon. Vizcarro Sanchez, the other accused pedophile who was allegedly solicited by the Zulocks to engage in prostitution with their son, is facing a plethora of unrelated charges, including felony enticing of another child for indecent purposes. A warrant issued for Vizcarro Sanchez's arrest on September 2nd says he acknowledged sending a 13-year-old boy who resided within the same home as Vizcarro Sanchez pornographic videos of other children he believed to be the victim's age as a means to coerce the child. This motherfucker needs to be castrated immediately. I mean, all of them. But the nature of Vizcarro Sanchez's relation to the victim and their living situation are not yet apparent. Vizcarro Sanchez, a former Kroger employee, is also charged with multiple counts of felony computer theft, felony shoplifting, and theft by taking at the Kroger supermarket location in Loganville after the ex-retail clerk was allegedly caught on the grocery store's surveillance footage conducting fraudulent sales transactions of $50 to $200 Apple iTunes gift cards, Nintendo Wii gift cards, Sony gift cards, and consumable goods at a cash register while he was working shifts between December of 2018 and July 2020. Affidavit statements allege that Vizcarro Sanchez manipulated the computer terminal by using unauthorized store coupons and hijacking another manager's override code to write off the shoplifted items as paid for, then pocketing the stolen merchandise. Now making a meager $425 per week working some unknown occupation, Vizcarro Sanchez is being represented by a court-appointed public defender and on all theft charges as well as the sex crimes against children after the state declared he is indigent, whatever. Yeah, indignant as well, probably. Vizcarro Sanchez is smirking in his mugshot taken upon booking at Walton County Jail and remains detained pending bail. A quick look at Vizcarro Sanchez's digital footprint shows he's an avid gamer obsessed with anime. His current Facebook cover photo portrays a fictional character from a Japanese animated series who's striving to bring justice to the world, while his YouTube channel has clips of him playing Street Fighter-style video game. Before his short-lived Kroger gig, Vizcarro Sanchez once attended the state championship for a popular Japanese trading card game to battle out who is the best card fighter in Georgia. I think all of that is pretty unrelated. Those are all pretty common hobbies for a whole lot of people. Anime, card games, and video games are not unusual. So I don't really know what all of that has to necessarily do with this, but whatever. I know. This is probably written with a more of a right-wing lean to it, and for some reason, right-wingers seem to think that anything anime or video game or card game culture is like really bad, and that's kind of silly, but whatever. Moving on. Zachary, the cameraman whose cell phone allegedly contained a folder titled Us, storing videos of his husband William sexually abusing their older son, confessed in a recorded police interview to sending child pornographic material of the routine sexual abuse to less than a dozen people. Zachary, whose Snapchat username is advertised on Instagram, has unopened Snapchat chats with many men, according to a concerned family member who was granted access to his social media accounts. Aside from Lawless and Vizcarro Sanchez, there are other potential co-defendants in the ongoing Georgia criminal case that are still under investigation and out there distributing videos of the Zulock boys. Alcovey Judicial Circuit District Attorney Randy McGinley, who serves Walton County, told the court at a September 7th bond hearing, according to a transcript provided to Townhall. Could the Zulock couple face federal charges? How far-reaching is the pedophile ring, and will other members be unmasked? We declined to comment, a public affairs officer at the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Northern District of Georgia replied when Townhall inquired if the U.S. Department of Justice has any interest in investigating and prosecuting a federal case against the Zulock co-defendants. Last year, Georgia's Department of Justice office pursued a handful of child sex crimes-related cases in its jurisdiction. As Townhall previously reported, the Biden administration's Department of Justice is preoccupied with targeting peaceful pro-life leaders and rounding up elderly Christian preachers who stand up for innocent unborn life. One father who protested outside of an abortion clinic in Georgia's northwest neighbor, Tennessee, was arrested at home by a swarm of armed FBI agents in front of his children. This is the thing that really pisses me off about these stories is not only are they not going covered, they're not getting prosecuted. They're not getting investigated. They're not getting, like, kick the whole fucking hornet's nest, uproot every one of these bastards that these guys were sending these pictures to, and put every fucking one of them in a maximum security prison and turn them loose with the gin pop so that they can all get murdered straight the fuck. Sorry, that's wrong. Not very Christian of me, but I don't give a shit. Like, some people deserve every bad thing that happens to them in life. And these guys are those people. Like, they deserve every bad thing that happens to them. And the people that they were sending this stuff to, they're no better. I said it on the last one. I have my suspicions that they were the reason they were able to afford this mansion and everything else was they were sending this stuff to higher up people, high profile people, and getting paid to do so. And they flew too close to the sun and got burned. And there's not going to be an investigation into any more of this other than, that's low hanging fruit to get a dude that lives with his mom and a guy that used to work at Kroger. They're going for the really low hanging fruit. They're not going to run up the chain and try to find anybody that's like higher up that's actually involved in this stuff, and the people who are actually sending these guys the money that they can afford to build this fucking mansion and do all this stuff. That's $7,500 a week. Like, the people who are actually behind all of this will never be touched, and that's the fucking tragedy of every one of these stories. Is they won't do anything about it because they're being covered by the people in the Biden administration and in the federal government and at the highest levels of state government. Child pornography is illegal contraband under federal law, which prohibits the production, distribution, importation, reception, or possession of child sexual abuse imagery, and federal jurisdiction is implicated if the offense occurred in interstate commerce. As the DOJ's Child Exploitation and Obscenity section, whose mission it is to protect the welfare of America's children and communities by enforcing federal criminal statutes relating to the exploitation of children and obscenity, explains, federal jurisdiction almost always applies when the internet is used to commit a child pornography violation, according to the Department of Justice. Child sex trafficking is prohibited by 18 U.S.C. 1591. Most people think of trafficking as involving movement across state or international borders. However, Section 1591 does not require proof that either the defendant or victim crossed state or international lines, per the DOJ. When the victim is a minor, Section 1591 does not require proof that the defendant used force, threats of force, fraud, or coercion, or any combination of those means to cause the minor to engage in a commercial sex act. And then we have the RICO Act. Following the armed raid, a sign on the Zulock mansion now says, "Do not enter, property of the Walton County Sheriff's Office." At the September bond hearing, Judge Jeffrey L. Foster mentioned the prosecution possibly proceeding forward under the Child Sex Trafficking Statute of the state's Racketeer, Influence, and Corrupt Organizations Act, known as OCGA 1614-4. Having been proceeding under RICO, I don't know if they are proceeding forward under the Child Sex Trafficking Statute, but there are collateral civil opportunities that the state can proceed with, Foster told the Zulock couple's criminal defense attorney, John E. Haldy, who was questioning the seizure's legality. So their assets have been seized, pending the resolution of those. To combat the increasing sophistication of various criminal elements, the Georgia General Assembly adopted the RICO Act and developed the state's RICO statute from an existing 1970 federal law that's designed to take down organized crime in the U.S. The state must prove that the defendant facing RICO charges committed two or more predicate crimes and that such predicate acts were committed as part of an enterprise engaging in a pattern of racketeering activity. As listed by OCGA 1614-3, racketeering activity can be defined as including prostitution, keeping a place of prostitution, pimping, and pandering. In Georgia, the state also possesses the power to impose civil remedies. A judge may order a defendant to give up any business interest or property that was gained through a RICO violation, according to the Atlanta-based Pate, Johnson & Church law firm. The custom-designed Zulock mansion, which was suspiciously constructed within half a year, was seized after the probable cause seizure warrant was signed by a judge. Before the Oxford Mansion's construction, the Zulock couple lived with the boys in a small-scale Snellville house. The couple's wealth allegedly materialized after the boys moved in. D.A. McGinley's office, which handles forfeitures considered civil proceedings, has filed a civil complaint seeking to forfeit the Zulock couple's property. But at the local level, the Zulock co-defendants were not charged with RICO Act violations or child sex trafficking. My office has reviewed the case and recommended to the grand jury what charges were appropriate based on the laws and the facts, D.A. McGinley wrote in an email to Townhall discussing the 17-count indictment. Sex trafficking was not charged and neither was a violation of the RICO Act. Again, that is based on the facts and circumstances of this specific case and the law. Zachary had contacted a few out-of-state gay Facebook friends to reconnect after getting the boys, the family member told Townhall. The relative also noticed Zachary, who follows gay pornographers in Atlanta with his Twitter account @GABottomGuy, appeared to have been testing the waters in several relationships, asking in messenger chats if his friends were happily cuffed. The couple took an excessive amount of family trips, the source said, staying at a number of Airbnbs across America. Just before July's police bust, in May and June of 2022, the Zulocks enjoyed a lengthy Airbnb stay in Chicago, while seeing the couple don pride gear, and Zachary focused on photographing tourist attractions that signaled support for LGBTQ inclusion. Between those 2 months last year, the Zulocks also went to Ohio, Indianapolis, and Gulf Shores to go to vacation spots for gay tourists, as well as the Zulock family. The couple was considering buying a condo there too. During one of the family's excursions in May 2018 to a Gulf Shores pizza place, Zachary had drawn a rainbow circle around a portion of a children's menu for kids ages 12 and under that jokingly quipped, "Children unattended will be sold as slaves." Also with the boys, Zachary wrote in a tongue-in-cheek Facebook post about child slavery. Whew. Not looking too deep into that. Zachary also posted a questionable photo in August 2020 captioned, "Waiting for pizza." According to journalist Andy No, the phrase could be a dog whistle for pedophiles seeking child exploitative material. Reporters say predators have typed cheese pizza as code for child pornography, and pizza emojis are reportedly used to find, sell, and trade images of child sexual abuse. Is the Pizzagate for real? Is it a legit thing? I don't know, but these little things don't just keep popping up randomly. Like, I feel like we're past the point with the state of our culture and society of still believing in coincidence where this sort of stuff is involved. Like, nothing is a coincidence anymore. If you see it and it seems suspicious, it's probably legitimately whatever the conspiracy theorists have said that it was. Makes it seem all the more realistic that Pizzagate is legit. Especially as much as these guys used their social media for stuff. That stuff doesn't just happen on accident. Like, why the fuck would you take a picture standing next to the Domino sign for no reason? Waiting for pizza. Okay. I could be wrong. I've maybe it's because I'm not gay, but I've been standing in a Domino's waiting for pizza plenty of times and never felt the need to take a picture of it and post it on Instagram or anything like that. I don't know. Just weird behavior. Other destinations over the years include New Orleans and Baton Rouge, and a cabin in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. These guys adopt these kids and then suddenly come into a ton of money to the extent that they can afford to build this giant mansion. And previously, I think it talked about it in the last episode or last article. They had previously lived in just a little regular apartment, nothing spectacular. They didn't have a house or anything, just regular apartment. And then they adopt these two boys, and now all of a sudden they can afford to build a mansion in like record time. Having having a mansion built in 6 months, that's fucking insane. Like out of this world insane. And then on top of that, they can also afford to go on like multiple trips all the time. What the fuck, man? Like, where's this money coming from? It talked about their jobs before. Like, those are not lavish, lucrative jobs. They're not pulling in 6 figures each to be able to afford this kind of crazy shit. Like, where's the money coming from? If they were really serious about this investigation, not Townhall, the Department of Justice and the people who are prosecuting this, the DA, they would be pulling all of their bank transactions. Like, find out where the money's coming from. That's where you're going to find out where the heart of this whole like child sex ring is coming from. This whole pedophile ring. Like, follow the fucking money. How many times do I say that? Follow the money. Follow the money. The nationwide trip also took the Zulocks to the nation's capital, where in September of 2019, in addition to a White House tour, the Zulock family took a selfie in front of the Human Rights Campaign headquarters in Washington, D.C. HRC is a prominent LGBTQ plus advocacy group and the largest gay lobbying civil rights organization of its kind within the U.S. At the beginning of last year, the couple ordered a massive framed map of the United States showcasing the adventures of the Zulock family, in which Zachary planned to mount to the wall somewhere in their mansion. It's bigger than I thought. Got to find a place to hang it and start pinning where we have gone, Zachary exclaimed in an early January 2022 post on Facebook. It's not just Georgia. As documented by reports in other U.S. states, Snapchat and Grindr have become modern-day honeypots for lurking pedophiles everywhere to connect with fellow child predators, circulating child pornography, and contacting minors to sexually abuse them. A spokesperson for Snap Inc., which owns Snapchat, wrote in an email to Townhall, "Any sexual abuse of minors is abhorrent and illegal, and we have dedicated teams that work closely with law enforcement, experts, and industry partners to combat it. If we become aware of any sexual conduct involving minors, whether it's identified through our proactive detection technology or reported to us through our confidential in-app reporting tools, we immediately remove it and report it to the authorities. We prohibit young people under the age of 13 from using Snapchat, and we have extra protections for Snapchatters under 18 that make it even harder for them to be discovered and contacted by people they don't know," the email statement reads. Reports of child sexual exploitation and child sexual abuse are reviewed by the company's trust and safety teams, the spokesperson told Townhall. Evidence of such illegal activity results in immediate Snapchat account termination with no chance for reinstatement, and is reported to the NCMEC, which then coordinates with domestic and international law enforcement. For CSAM imagery, the camera company uses photo DNA image identification, and for videos, it uses Google's CSAI match. Family members now suspect that the Zulocks censored their children's faces to evade law enforcement's detection technology. And we will be back on Wednesday with part 3 of this. I don't know. I don't really know what to add that I haven't already said. This stuff is not getting the attention it deserves, and that is fucking criminal. How many children are out there right now that are in a similar situation that are powerless to do anything about it? I mean, it talked about like they'd make the kids stand for 8 hours at a time in the corner and only let them like leave the corner to eat and go to the bathroom. Like, they're torturing these kids into thinking that they have to do these things, and then I'm sure they're taking these trips as like to reward them, but at the same time they're probably using these trips to pimp them out all over the country. Like, what, man? They really, I don't know. We'll get into the last 2 parts over the next 2 episodes, and we'll see where this ends up. How it all shakes out and stuff. But man, it's just so rough to go through this stuff. But please share this stuff with anybody and everybody. Like, as Jeff said on commented on the first Rumble video, like this stuff cannot get memory hold. It cannot go ignored. It cannot go untalked about. People need to know that this is going on, and they need to be fucking outraged. They need to go after the people who are doing this. They need to go after the organizations that are putting these children in these situations, which we'll come to over the next couple episodes. Like it's everything about this is horrendous and horrible, and it needs to be stopped. It needs to be stopped now. So be sure to tune in for the next one. Like I said, share all this with everybody. Thank you for all of your support, and I will catch you next time. All right, fact check this podcast, and it's time for part 3 of the 4-part Townhall investigative series looking at the LGBTQ pedophile ring that was going on in Georgia with the 2 gay guys, the Zulock family, I guess you would call them, who adopted 2 little boys and then proceeded to sexually abuse them while filming it, while inviting other people to participate, on top of just a whole lot of other kind of sketchy and questionable shit surrounding their lives and what they were doing. Let's just get right into part 3. This one actually has some stuff about the adoption agency that let these guys adopt them. Man, I don't know how that fucking happens, but here we are. So here we go, part 3. Let's take off with it. Part 3. How did an accused child rapist adopt 2 children? Like, this is the question, right? Like, how in the hell does that happen? There were more than just warning signs that went unnoticed during gay activist William Dale Zulock Jr. and Zach Jacoby Zulock's expedited adoption process. A little over 4 years later, the adoptive fathers of 2 are now facing a laundry list of charges for unspeakable sex crimes they allegedly committed against their young adopted sons, including rape, producing child pornography of the children's routine sexual abuse, and prostituting their 11-year-old boy to pedophiles in the area. In the latest installment of the Zulock horror story, we're exposing everything we learned about the faith-based special needs adoption agency that the same-sex couple used to adopt the 2 boys, the role that Georgia's child welfare system played in placing the children who are back in foster care in an abusive household, and the lack of accountability across the board. We're naming names. Fucking A right. Red flags. Townhall has learned that 7 years prior to the adoption, Zachary was accused of being a child rapist, but was never charged. More than a decade ago, there was a 2011 probe into Zachary's alleged pedophilic behavior when he was accused of luring a 14-year-old boy to a residence in Walton County, the same jurisdiction as today's horrifying child sexual abuse case, and having anal sex with the underage victim. In 2011, the 2011 child rape case was shut down and no charges were pursued against Zachary. Alcovey Judicial Circuit District Attorney Randy McGinley, who serves Walton County, has now formally asked the Walton County Sheriff's Office to continue its previous probe because he believes it was closed without a whole lot of investigation into it, which wouldn't be surprising. And he didn't want to kick the hornet's nest at that time when the LGBT stuff was starting to become more prevalent and making its way into mainstream society and culture. Stuff would go largely ignored with things like that. The 2011 case is being looked into by my office along with the sheriff's office, McGinley confirmed in an email to Townhall. Lieutenant Zachary Barrett of the Criminal Investigations Division told Townhall that Walton County Sheriff's Office has been in constant communication with McGinley and the District Attorney's Office while navigating the case involving the Zulocks, including after the initial arrest took place, the detectives uncovered the past allegations. As for why the 2011 case was closed, Barrett wrote, "The 2011 case was handled in a manner that is inconsistent with today's current investigatory standards, but the law enforcement officers in the Criminal Investigations Division at that time have since retired. Current WCSO detectives are assessing the case and seeking any leads that may still yield charges. As with all cases, our detectives are diligent and passionate when it comes to charging child molesters and will always seek justice for the victim. Walton County Sheriff's Office denied Townhall's public records request seeking a copy of the indictment report that the 2011 case is based on. An investigator in the sheriff's office contacted Detective Chrisley Cavaretto, the detective overseeing the current Zulock investigation, and a name near the top of the state's witness list, just to verify that information in the previous case will not hinder the active case at this time. Cavaretto has reopened the 2011 case, the investigator replied. Nothing is releasable at this time. Cavaretto's email signature includes this ironic quote, "The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing." Sounds like our society in general, doesn't it? The boys could have been rescued as early as June of 2020. Zachary had posted about a Walton County Sheriff's Office deputy appearing outside his and William's old small-scale Snellville house, where the Zulock couple first lived with the boys until their massive Oxford mansion was suspiciously constructed in record time in mid-2020. A police cruiser was parked at the end of the couple's driveway, and a responding deputy was on scene because reckless teen drivers had hit the Zulock family's mailbox. Luckily, this was later in the day/night, and the boys were not outside playing, thank God, Zachary wrote on Facebook. Zachary, who affectionately calls his husband my partner in crime for life, started dating William in the summer of 2013, and the men married about 4 years later in December of 2017. Since they've been together, William said he looked forward to the day that we can start a family. The gay newlyweds then sought to locally adopt children not long after their picturesque wedding. The adoption process. How was a previously accused child rapist able to adopt 2 children with his newly wedded husband? Apparently, with ease. In 2018, the Zulock co-defendants adopted the 2 brothers through All God's Children, Inc., a now-defunct private special needs adoption agency in Watkinsville, which focused on children in the state who have waited the longest to be placed with a family. All God's Children's matched families with special needs children considered more difficult to place because they are older, need to be placed with their siblings, or have physical, mental, or emotional behavioral challenges, read the agency's overview. The brothers, now ages 9 and 11, already came from a broken home where their biological parents were addicted to heroin, per a relative's knowledge. I do think they had every intention, and this is why they adopted them for this purpose. Another family member who spoke exclusively with Townhall out of concern for the sibling pair's well-being expressed. William and Zachary preyed on the children's vulnerability as kids raised by struggling heroin addicts, Townhall's family insider asserted. As well as undergoing criminal background checks, William and Zachary were required to attend mandatory pre-adoption parenting classes called Parents as Tender Healers, trauma-informed training curriculum, to learn more about parenting children with a history of losses. An agency caseworker also completed a family assessment, which was presented to social workers throughout Georgia for matchmaking, and a home study of the Zulocks. The entire undertaking took 8 to 12 weeks. Good God, 8 to 12 weeks to adopt 2 kids? That's... For anybody who doesn't know how that whole system works, holy fuck, that's insane. A lot of times it'll take months on top of months, if not a year or more. Sometimes you're looking at 12 to 18 months. They had it done in 8 to 12 weeks. Holy shit. Seven months after the boys moved in on March 30th of 2018, Georgia's courts made the Forever Family official on November 7th, 2018. All God's Children, a former member agency of the Georgia Association of Licensed Adoption Agencies statewide network, had worked in partnership with the Georgia Department of Human Services, which oversees the state's Division of Family and Children's Services, to find families for Georgia's waiting children, according to the agency's description. Townhall contacted Georgia DHS regarding how much oversight and involvement it had within the agency's operations. Georgia DHS Communications Director Kylie Winton stated that the DHS's Office of Residential Child Care, a unit tasked with inspecting, monitoring, and registering child care facilities, licenses, adoption agencies for placement of children in adoptive homes, that such licensed private agencies focus primarily on the adoption of children who are not in the custody of DFCS. However, some child placing agencies provide adoption services for children who are in permanent custody of DFCS through existing contracts. Winton wrote in an email statement to the town hall, the state's DFCS provides each child placing agency with guidelines for home approvals and qualifications for staff working under the contract, Winton explained. Town Hall also asked if the 2011 case was ever officially brought up over the course of the adoption process and if the alleged incident ever appeared during Zachary's criminal records check when the co-defendant applied to become an adoptive parent. DFCS child welfare and CPS records are confidential under state law, the DHS spokesperson said. As such, we are unable to comment on the specifics of any child welfare or abuse and neglect cases, nor confirm or deny the existence of related records. I mean, going back to above, like the fact that they were able to find this out fairly easily about the 2011 case. Kind of makes me think it probably showed up on a background report and somebody kicked it under the rug. Like, this is negligence all the way around for a specific for a specific purpose too. Not the pedophilic purpose, but because this is what you have to do to be a good ally or an activist for a cause, is you have to just ignore all the red flags and just do something anyway. As for how involved Georgia DFCS was in the agency's background checks, family placement, and home visits, Winton said all families are required to undergo background checks, including fingerprint-based checks of state and national crime information databases and checks of child abuse and neglect registries, whether they are working with a child placing agency or DFCS. DFCS selects families for children through a home study review process. Home visits are made by both the CPA and the DFCS case manager monthly through finalization. Everything seemed fine. I actually thought DFCS would be more scrutinizing with them because they were a same-sex couple, the Zulock family insider told Town Hall. However, it seemed like they passed everything with flying colors, the source said. The adoption process is moving along faster than expected, exclaimed the Facebook event page for William and Zachary's adoption shower, which was held at their Snellville house in March of 2018, 2 years before the Oxford Mansion's construction. The domestic nonprofit dissolved in October of 2020, according to the Georgia Corporations Division. The family member who was given access to Zachary's social media accounts saw that he had privately discussed on Instagram its impending dissolution with All God's Children's ex-executive director, Emily Carroll Bailey, when he was going to refer someone to y'all on the website. Unfortunately, we had to close, Bailey wrote to Zachary, who reacted with the crying face emoji in a private Instagram chat. Zachary disclosed that he and William were deciding on adopting a girl, too. We are still trying to decide if we want to try and adopt a girl, he said. We are doing awesome. The boys have changed so much from when we first met them. They aren't even the same kids. He messaged, stating that their older child used to be in an emotional and behavioral disorder classroom. And here's the actual text for these messages that are going back and forth. So what the Emily Bailey, the as it says, the ex-executive director for All God's Children says, unfortunately, we had to close. A combination of factors. DFCS stopped all new family visits for months due to COVID. That held up placements. Financially, we just didn't have the resources to be sustainable into the future. On top of that, the state completely changed up the contracting process, which added lots of complications. Probably more stringent on the way they were conducting checks and stuff. Anyway, not postulating here. I just wanted to personally thank you and everyone who was involved in our process. The boys truly changed our lives. Yeah, you see the mansion. It makes me so happy to hear this, Bailey wrote back. So glad you and the boys are thriving. Zachary then asked Bailey for a personal recommendation on another adoption agency, to which Bailey recommended 2 agencies open to same-sex families. Bethany Christian Services, the most influential and largest conservative Christian adoption agency in America, and Chris 180, the first and largest nonprofit organization in Georgia to openly celebrate and serve LGBTQ youth. Thanks so much, Emily, Zachary messaged, pinging a heart reaction. Flash forward to this past summer, the county's DFCS office was notified about the need for emergency protective placement for 2 young children and joined Athens-Clarke County Sexual Assault Nurse Examiners Program advocates who provided forensic medical attention to the abused Zulock boys in the midnight July rescue operation at the family's mansion. Both boys were placed in DFCS custody. They made us give up our parental rights on August 1st. William, who signed over custody of the children to the state at an August 1st hearing, said in a recorded jailhouse call shared with Townhall, I really don't want them back in foster care because they don't deserve that. Hypocrisy. Zachary had lambasted the children's former foster parents in a private messenger chat from July 2020 with a Facebook friend. And yes, a lot of kids are sexually abused, especially in foster care. Some people only foster for the money and don't give a shit about the kids. The boys' foster parents were not bad people, however. They only did it for the money. Yeah, y'all were only doing it for the money and the fucking. Here's I'll read the whole messenger chat from Zachary Zulock. Being a foster parent can change a child's life, good or bad. I think it takes a very special person with a big heart that can be a foster parent. I could never foster because I have a huge heart and I would get attached to the child and would want to adopt them all. I cannot fathom what you went through. That's terrible, but I'm glad you survived. And yes, a lot of kids are sexually abused, especially in foster care. Some people only foster for the money. Don't give a shit about the kids. The boys' foster parents were not bad people, however. They only did it for the money. They never spent time with the boys. They didn't reward good behaviors, and they didn't address bad behaviors. The boys would have terrible days at school and daycare, but we would come over there to do our visit, and they would be watching cartoons and the TV on the TV and playing on their tablets. And they were church people, which is fine. I have nothing against that. But it's a problem when the only nice clothes and shoes the boys had were their church clothes. The rest of their clothes probably came with them from their biological home. Normal shoes were too small for his feet, but yet he was wearing them every day. A lot of harsh words for the foster parents. I mean, yeah, you did things with them and traveled with them. You also literally raped them on a regular basis, filmed yourselves doing it, and invited other people to do it. I don't know, maybe if I'm a kid, I'd rather have ratty clothes and not get raped. To abuse a child, physical, mentally, or sexually, is despicable. Our legal system is so fucked up, Zachary messaged. Elsewhere in the conversation, Zachary emphasized, I have always believed that kids are a red line not to be crossed. You don't attack physically, of course, verbally, or anything to a child. We are making our boys' lives better and full of love. I could never foster because I have a huge heart and I would get attached to the child and want to adopt them all, he typed after stating that they're hoping to adopt a toddler-aged girl next. We would prefer like a 2 or 3-year-old, Zachary wrote. They only get to be kids for such a small amount of time. Let them enjoy it. In the same chat, Zachary was invited to go on a ride-along with the Facebook friend's police husband. Personally, even as a white man, I have a bad feeling and a couple experiences that ended fine over my life, Zachary replied, about cops. Zachary had ranted on Facebook about the need to reform the foster care system and adoption process in America. All kids deserve a loving and safe home, Zachary wrote in a post. How many may be tempted by prostitution? He asked in another. Out of the 672,594 foster children documented in 2019, how many will get the love they deserve? Zachary questioned. These are some sick motherfuckers. Let's see. We'll read a couple of Zachary Zulock's posts here that are listed. In this one, it's a Facebook post from November 17th, 2018. He says, everybody needs to go see Instant Family, A++ movie. This movie is spot on when it comes to the process, challenges, and struggles that children in foster care go through, foster parents and potential adoptive parents go through. So many times during the movie, they would say things that they told us in meetings and classes when we went through the process. It also touches on the emotions that the child and the parents go through. Definitely some emotional moments. Of course, there are happy endings like the movie, but unfortunately, so many children turn 18, age out of the foster system, and never get adopted and get to experience a forever home because most don't want to adopt teenagers or kids that are considered damaged goods. Whenever you think you've gone through, just remember the kids have lost everything when they're taken from their biological homes and placed in a home. Each kid has a story to tell. All kids deserve a loving and safe home, even teenagers who are children too. Man. Saying all this while doing the things that they were doing. Like, what the fuck? This is from February 4th of 2021. Reform the foster care and adoption process in this country. In 2019, there was 672,594 children in the foster care system, according to the website below. Children without a forever home, children whose life was completely changed at no fault of their own, children whose society labels as bad kids because they act out, whether it's physical or verbal, but in reality, they are good kids who don't know what will happen to them and don't know how to express themselves. They're just children. And out of the 672,594 kids, how many will age out of the foster system? Ones that will never get a forever home, get the love they deserve, won't get the financial, emotional, or physical support they need to make it in the world. How many may be tempted by drugs, alcohol, or prostitution? And what about suicide? We can do better. We must do better. So it's a terrible thing if they're tempted by prostitution on their own, but if you're the one who's whoring them out, A-okay, right there. Man, these are some horrible fucks. Zachary also criticized conservative speaker Cissy Graham Lynch's speech during the 2020 Republican National Convention, where evangelist Reverend Billy Graham's granddaughter fought to protect the religious freedoms of Christian-run organizations. I'm not sure if the adoption agency that William and I used would have stopped us because we are gay. For the longest time, that never crossed my mind. If we had not been allowed to adopt the boys, that's taking our rights away. What about all the LGBTQ couples out there that have been stopped from adopting? What about their rights? Zachary wrote in a Facebook post. I'm not reading all of this post. You can either go to the article and read it or pull up the video and pause it here and you can read it yourself. I'm not going through another one of this guy's posts. It's going to make me sick to my stomach if I keep reading this bullshit. The fact that they've got all of this stuff, like, I don't understand how this happens. I don't understand how it happens. How does a previous, you know what? the gun control argument is one that the left makes all the time, and they're like, let's make adopting kids as easy as getting a gun. Let's make getting a gun as easy as adopting kids. This guy literally has a background, a history, a case that had been opened against him for pedophilia, and it got completely ignored. And in, 8 to 12 weeks is fucking record time. They let this guy adopt 2 kids. 2! Not 1, 2. Whereas I have literally no criminal background whatsoever. But because I had back child support that I owed, I get put on a hold or a waiting list, and I'm not allowed to buy a gun for 6 weeks. I almost have to wait. I'm off that list now. I'm completely paid up. And that was all circumstantial, huge job change and everything else, and took a massive pay cut and went through a wild period in life where I just literally didn't have the money to pay my child support at the time. So anyway, that's all caught up, and I'm no longer on that list. But I had to wait as long to buy a gun as what a guy who had been had a case opened against him for pedophilia had to wait to adopt 2 kids. What the fuck? And then, it keeps getting mentioned, and it cannot be overstated. Like, the expediency with which all of this happened, like how fast they got these kids, how fast they got this mansion built. Whichever one of them, I think it was Zachary, reported like $7,500 in weekly salary as a small town bank branch manager. You're telling me this dude was making $400,000 a year as a small town branch manager? No. I'm from small towns. I know what the branch managers make. Maybe, a quarter of that is even overstating it. Generally speaking, it's in the $65,000 to $70,000 range, if even that. That's being generous. And where's the financing come from for this? How does it get approved and built that fast? None of this makes sense. None of this adds up. The more I read through this, the investigations that she did with this, with writing this whole thing and getting really digging into it and looking at it, the more I read, the more questions I have. Holy shit, how is all of this happening? There's got to be. I can't believe these guys haven't been released into Gen Pop in their prisons yet, and allow the convicted murderers to go ahead and do what convicted murderers do to pedophiles, because these guys have got to know some shit. They've got to have some names and sources and contacts. If they could get them to talk, who knows how extensive this kind of stuff goes. I hate to sound conspiracy theorist on this stuff, but it's not limited to these 2 dudes and the 2 people that they were propositioning to come, assault these kids. There are other people involved in this, and I would be willing to bet that the names of those other people are pretty affluent types of people. So anyway, we'll follow this up with part 4, wrap it up, and then I'm really, really hoping to get Mia Cathell, the author of this. I'm hoping to get her on to discuss more about it. So cross your fingers, wish me luck. Maybe shoot her a tag her, repost this stuff and tag her on Twitter and Facebook, and maybe I can get her on, because I really, like I said, this, the more I read, the more questions I have about how the fuck does this kind of thing happen. So be sure to tune in for the fourth and final installment of this. Maybe. Or maybe there will be some continuation afterwards. Thanks, everybody. See you next time. All right. Fact check this podcast, and it's time for part 4 of the 4-part series looking at the gay Georgia couple who adopted a pair of brothers and then proceeded to sexually assault, video themselves doing it, and invite other people to join. This is the 4th part of Mia Cathal's 4-part investigative series on Townhall, looking into this whole fucked up situation and the case that's being built from it. So let's just jump right in and let's wrap this thing up. This has been a tough one to get through. I've done the whole thing over the course of 4 days. Y'all have gotten to have it stretched out over a couple weeks. And it's tough to go through these this quickly, but at the same time, as tough as some of this stuff is to read, I felt like I kind of needed to go through them quickly for myself, because I don't know if I could pick it back up. Like if I did the first one and I had to wait a week before I did the next one, I don't know if I'd have the stomach to pick it back up. And I'm a pretty tough old bastard, by my own assertions, and this stuff is awful. And anybody who's seen this can attest to, like, this stuff has been awful. So anyway, here we go. Part 4. What's jail like for 2 accused child rapists? Not nearly as horrific as it should be. Not even close. The fact that they've been in for some months and they're still alive means it is not as bad as it should have been. But I digress. This is part 4 of a 4-part investigative series. Part 1 laid out the horrifying facts of the child prostitution case. Part 2 explored the LGBTQ pedophiles' rings reach, and Part 3 shined a spotlight on the state's failure to protect the 2 little boys from suffering through serial sexual abuse allegedly committed by their gay activist fathers, who became their adoptive parents thanks to Georgia's courts and child welfare system. Today's 4th and final piece details what life is like in jail for these 2 alleged child rapists, each facing over 9 life sentences. They should only face the one, and that's the fucking gas chamber. Since they're being prosecuted as co-defendants, the adoptive fathers are housed separately while in pretrial detainment. An out-of-county transfer placed Zach Jacoby Zulock in Barrow County Detention Center's maximum security unit. Due to the nature of the charges, Zachary appears to be experiencing what's colloquially called jail justice, part of an honor code amongst inmates and a branch of justice directed at offenders who would harm children in any way, child murderers, rapists, and molesters, aka chomos. In terms of the lockup's pecking order, they're the lowest rung on the hierarchical ladder. Meanwhile, the most William Dale Zulock Jr. is contending with is his dietary restrictions in Walton County Jail. Zachary told his relative, who exclusively shared their series of taped jailhouse calls from the fall of 2022 with Townhall, he's fearful that a fellow cellmate laced his drink. I think someone put something in my drink, Zachary suspected in an October phone call, elucidating, "There was a comment made to me last night. Someone tried to give me something, and when I didn't, the way the inmate said it, like, 'You want another one?' And I was like, 'Another one? I've never had another one before.' It made my arm and everything go numb," Zachary said. "I couldn't move my hands. My fingers were stuck. After experiencing stroke-like symptoms, he implored the relative to get his lawyer to free him. I can't have something like this happen again. All the bad things that happen to you, you deserve much, much worse. Haldy needs to get me out, Zachary texted the family member through jail ATM. The family member told Zachary the lawyer said his dilemma won't make any difference in being bonded out, and that the judge would laugh him out of the courtroom. A month later, Zachary still begged for his defense attorney, Johnny Haldy, to work a deal to get me some kind of bond. Tell DA that I want an ankle monitor and, if required, a low bond, Zachary demanded in a message to a relative. Haldy needs to try everything possible to get us out. I don't know if he can try to get William out too with this information or just me. Here's a message from Zach Zulock to a family member on the outside. So an officer approached me last month about drugs in the dorm. I only gave him a vague answer because it threw me off. Then he told me to contact investigations on this kiosk. Investigations reached out to me and I gave them generic information. They told me to have my attorney call the DA. I can't give information to help them while I'm here. So Haldy needs to work a deal to get me out on some kind of bond. The investigator should be calling Haldy too. Tell DA that I want an ankle monitor and, if required, a low bond amount. You can copy and paste this message to Haldy if you want. Haldy needs to try everything possible to get us out. I don't know if he can try to get William out too with this information or just me, but this is a good thing. Like I said, they randomly reached out to me. Somebody's testing him. Anyway. It's not my fault that I got drugged, Zachary messaged his family member. I still need to go to the hospital for stroke evaluation. He had visited a nurse in the jail's medical wing, where staff took blood work and gave Zachary a Benadryl and placed him on anti-inflammatory medication for several days. Zachary believes he was slipped his cellmate's prescription drug for nightmares. After alerting the jail staff of his ordeal, Zachary said he was threatened twice by the cellmate. I was just threatened again, Zachary said, to physically beat me or have someone do it for him. Here's some more of the messages, which just go through what we just went through. You can see the messages themselves. I mean, I guess the only thing I can ask for is if you can just pray at least, regardless, Zachary asked of the family member. It's funny how non-religious people turn to prayer whenever they're at their lowest. At another point in one of the telephone exchanges, Zachary said he bought a Bible from the jail's bookstore. Reading the Bible is helping, and I think I read the whole thing in 16 days, but then I've been rereading it. That way I can, re-understand things and retake things in, because it's a lot to take in the first time you read it. In the meantime, William, like other jailbirds, has a tablet to text on with a digital library of books to choose from. One time, the relative checked in with William. He was looking forward to an origami do-it-yourself book to keep my mind off things. But it's not always a state of zen for William, who's also in maximum security and temporarily let out of the cell block for a 4-hour recreation period in the offender's rec, as it's dubbed. Gang members, drug dealers, and murderers bunk together in William's dormitory. But they're not allowed in our rec because if they touch us, they get assault charges, he explained. It just so happens that William is related to one of his cellmates by marriage. I'm one of the least troubled ones in here, William claimed. They don't know how to talk normal. They like to yell, William said, when detainees were shouting in the background of the call. William, who's lactose intolerant and cannot drink the milk at breakfast time or any dairy products offered in the slammer, complained about the soy patties and bologna and cheese sandwiches for lunch, which he doesn't eat. I don't even know a dog would eat those bologna sandwiches. That's how low grade the meat is, fussed William, whose weight is down to 120 pounds. This place is a joke, William snickered, grumbling about the jailhouse's decrepit housing conditions. It's not a fucking 5-star hotel, buddy. You are there because you are the scum of the earth. Sorry that they give you basic food that you don't like and the accommodations aren't great. I don't feel bad for you whatsoever. Yesterday was miserable, William said after seeing the indictment documents. They called me up front again for fingerprints, and I saw the new charges that they're putting against, I'm assuming, both of us. There's 17 charges. The public statement mentioned that there were child porn videos. I can imagine there was more than one video that will be a separate count. Do you think that's what they're doing? The relative suggested. I'm assuming so, William conceded hesitantly. William said he's really worried about his spouse's mental well-being. I know Zach's a very emotional person, so I know he's probably locking up and shutting down and not talking. William requested from the relative, well, tell him I love him when you talk to him. I tell him good night and good morning every day. I haven't missed a single day that I tell him good night. All I can say is, I don't want to say it, but brace yourself for the truth. A choked up William wept. Okay, just don't give up on us, he exhorted, breaking down in tears. Later on, signing off, William insisted, if you talk to Zach, tell him I still love him. This is why I'm surprised these guys haven't had any major issues. Like, I don't want to say it, but brace yourself for the truth. They gonna name names. Hopefully. The relative relayed William's message to Zachary. Oh yeah, Zachary dismissed William's love note. Did you figure out the Instagram thing? Asked Zachary, who wants his Instagram page taken down as rage-filled comments continued to flood his feed. This dude's like true narcissist and very well may be the ringleader of this whole thing. Like, he's worried about the money. He's worried about the social media. He ain't worried about kids. He ain't worried about his spouse. He's worried about, like, how does this make me look? A week later, William still doted on Zachary. Please tell him I love him and that he is my husband and I'll always worry about him. William texted the family member from the jail's tablet on Intel Message, an inmate messaging application. Have you talked to him recently? Try and ask him how his day is and what did he eat. William fretted. Just try to keep him sane. Doing my best to keep my hopes up, William messaged. William also divulged he voted in the 2022 midterm elections by mailing in an absentee ballot. Oh, let Zachary know I got a letter in the mail for an absentee ballot. I mailed it in so I can vote since I'm not convicted yet. See if he got one. Of course, gays are very concerned about voting. That's the most important thing that they can do. Zachary, who proudly posted, I secured my vote sticker after voting in Battleground Georgia's critical 2022 midterm primaries, revealed on Facebook that he voted for President Joe Biden during the state's primaries in the 2020 presidential election. He later regretted casting his ballot for Biden and wished he backed far-left socialist Senator Bernie Sanders instead. Zach was a fervent Black Lives Matter supporter during the 2020 violent Antifa BLM riots, once adding an image of former President Barack Obama with a BLM frame as a temporary Facebook profile picture and making the Obama family as well as BLM graphic, featuring a Pan-African flag, the Pride flag, the bisexual flag, and the trans flag, his Facebook cover photos. Oh, that's so much. That's so much. It's got to be a lot of work to virtue signal that hard. I guess it's not a virtue signal for these people. It's like it's a sincere religious statement. What's next? Haldy, the Zulock couple's legal counsel, who waived the preliminary hearing to avoid a judge hearing any more jarring details about the case from the prosecution, has filed a special demurrer and motion to quash the 17-count indictment in November, claiming that the charges don't specify the manner in which the co-defendants allegedly committed the various child sex crimes. Rather, the counts simply state the statutory requisites and/or language. The offenses are alleged to have occurred within a 32-month window, the criminal defense lawyer noted, sometime between December 2019 and July 2022. Arrest date. Haldy argued that the prosecution ought to reasonably narrow the range of dates and request an evidentiary hearing on this matter. If an indictment is dismissed as a result of a successful demurrer, the state does have the ability to re-indict the case. Very often, however, the dismissal will afford the defense another opportunity to convince the state of the weakness in its case in an effort to prevent a second indictment, which can lead to an ultimate dismissal of the charges, according to a Georgia trial lawyer. Under current Georgia law, OCGA 17753.1, if two indictments are dismissed as a result of a special demurrer or any other legal motion, the state will then be barred from any further prosecution of the co-defendants, who then cannot be charged again. DA Randy McGinley has since filed a motion to disqualify Haldy and move to sever the Zulocks at trial, since they're jointly indicted as co-defendants. McGinley intends to call upon William and Zachary as witnesses in their separate trials, if severed. At first, after agreeing to talk with authorities, Zachary initially blamed William for starting the child sexual abuse of the Zulock boys, according to court records. But William pointed fingers back at Zachary during phone discussions with the relative. There's a lot of stuff that went on that I don't know about, William told the relative when questioned about his and Zachary's taped confessions. Yes, because I mean, like I said, there was a lot of stuff going on that I had no idea about, he reiterated. Was Zach the family member clarified? Yeah, William replied. See, this is why I don't know how they could possibly make a motion with any level of like thinking that it's actually going to happen to get any of this stuff dismissed, because you have the two of them confessing to more or less everything. Like, there's pretty damning evidence across the board on all of it. There is the actual confessions themselves. Like, I don't know where a not guilty plea can come from, and I don't know how you could possibly get this thrown out when there's already so much stacked against these guys. Like, they should go away for ever and ever and ever, never see daylight again, period. Yeah, I mean, if these guys get off with nothing, then our legal system and our justice system has fucking failed everything. That would more than prove what a joke the legal system is in this country. Anybody who's had to take part in the legal system knows that it's a fucking joke. But if these guys get off with this, that is the most damning evidence against our system that could ever be brought, because they've literally confessed to fucking everything. They've confessed to everything. Like, there's no way they can get off with this. When they came to our house, I had no idea what was going on, William claimed. William also denied knowing Lawless. I've never even met him. I didn't know the name until then, he alleged. The relative pressed William if he was ever aware of the 2011 child rape case naming Zachary. 2011? I don't know anything about any of that, because that was before me, said William, stressing he didn't start dating Zachary until August of 2013. In addition, McGinley has requested that Judge Jeffrey L. Foster, the judge presiding over the Zulock case, sign off on orders granting limited immunity to William and Zachary to testify against each other at trial, requiring their respective testimonies and stipulating that the then severed defendants shall not be excused from testifying on the basis of the privilege against self-incrimination. If the request is granted and the Zulocks refuse to testify, the defendants shall be held in contempt of court. Hey, the DA is going to try to put us against each other, William, reacting to McGinley's motions, messaged the relative. Walton County can go to hell if they think they can do that. We will never go against each other, and I know they will lie through their teeth to get us to fight each other. That's all these scum know what to do is lie. Well, they are not going to get their way. The fight is on against them. I know Zachary knows I'm not going to do any such thing. I still stand by with the last thing I told him. Hopefully he remembers. I'm sure he does. LOL, he always remembers. One day this nightmare will end, William wrote. There's some stuff that's omitted from the message. Somebody can tell you more. Anyway, not sure what that part is, but there's more that William had said in here. Both of the Zulock co-defendants are due back in court for a motion hearing before Judge Foster on February 1st. So I need to do some follow-up and see what's come of that, and see how this thing is proceeding. I really hope to get the author of these pieces on so that I can talk to her about the follow-up and what's happening with the case and everything. One of the things that, now this is just entirely me postulating on what looks to be going on and how it appears from reading through this stuff. all right, this is like a terrible way to put it, but William kind of seems to be the woman in the relationship, more emotional, more loyalty driven, and Zachary seems to be of a more sociopathic mindset, much more like in all of the messages with the relative and stuff, much more concerned about the social media stuff, much more concerned about the money stuff, the house stuff, like very little talk of the kids, very little talk of William. It's all business, and it's all like that's what he's worried about. So what they may be trying to do by severing the case and pitting the two against each other is Zachary's already shown a willingness to throw William under the bus, whether it was true or not. Zachary seems to be willing to or looking out for his own interest. And if that happens, obviously William knows more than what he's willing to talk about with the relative. It could get naming of names and really kind of pushing this thing around. It'll be interesting to follow the trial, and I can almost guarantee you mainstream media will not cover it at all. There will be no coverage on CNN or MSNBC or even Fox, probably. Like, this is not going to make public news because there's the potential that these guys, as much as they've traveled and with what was going on and the suspicious circumstances surrounding their house and the adoption and everything, I'd say suspicious. I mean, for me, from the outside looking in, it seems really fucking suspicious. So, with all of that, you can't risk covering something like that live and have things come out about people who don't want those things to come out about them. So this thing will be largely kept under wraps, I would suspect, until the narrative can be crafted in the correct manner for the public digestion. Anyway, yeah, that's it. That's part 4. I will follow up as I find more information and details on this and try to keep track of it and hopefully highlight and spotlight this thing so that people know what's going on. Like, this isn't the only place that this is happening. This is a very isolated scenario in which it was the people involved got busted. So, and this stuff is, I mean, we talked about the Mastodon stuff before. We've talked about the like the child trafficking and the child porn and stuff on Twitter before. Like, this stuff is not new. This stuff is not uncommon, unfortunately. And there needs to be supposedly there is a renewed push to go after this stuff, to target this stuff and to take it down and to put people in jail. But how sincere is that effort? Because, I mean, we've never seen anything come of the Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell stuff. We still have yet to see anything come out of the Hunter Biden laptop thing, and a lot of the leaks off of that are pretty fucking damning as far as some of this similar stuff goes. Like, this shit is not uncommon, and it's not new, and it's not just like, random dudes in small town Georgia. Like, it's big name people with big money going behind these things. And when is something gonna actually fucking happen? So stay tuned. Hopefully it happens. And if it does, I'll be there to cover it and talk about it and plaster it everywhere and hopefully get some eyes on it, because this stuff needs to be talked about. That's all I got for today. Check out the daily stuff. Also, this as an entire 4-part series, I'm going to put it together as one supercut, and all 4 parts are going to be together on a YouTube, just a long video on YouTube that goes through all 4 of them together. As much as I don't want to use YouTube, it is the most useful platform for getting information like this out. So there will be a full 4-part, full series supercut put together that'll go up on YouTube sometime in the next couple of days. For those of you who are listening, for those of you who have been watching on Rumble and have been catching these as I put them out early, it'll be in a couple weeks after the final episode drops on the podcast. So I'll put the supercut up on YouTube, and then it can be shared everywhere from there too. So thank you all for tuning in for this whole thing. Share this everywhere. Make people aware of what's going on. It's because it's not just this isolated event. Thanks, everybody.